everybody. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. This is Eve West. This channel is dedicated to a book that I wrote. It's called Follow. It's a book that actually focuses on a holistic view of spirituality. Typically when we think of spirituality, we think of, a psychological aspect of us, but spirituality is not just psychological about caring and love and peace and joy and those metaphysical aspects of a human being, but it's also about the earthly aspect of us, about the reptilian aspect of the brain, the five senses, we can see, taste, touch, smell, and hear. And so I try to bridge the two into one within this book. The book focuses a lot on basically human psychology and the separation of the mind. This alludes back to the Garden of Eden when the Creator God separates Adam, which is the material, from Eve, which is the spiritual aspect of the brain. And so I talk about how the constructs of the matrix uphold that separation of a human being. And I focus on, different constructs such as the, media and entertainment, education, government, religion. Religion was especially important to my conditioning. Education as well. I taught school for over 13 years, and so I really got to see firsthand the inner workings of education and how it's designed to create the false ego. And as it pertains to human psychology and the separation of the mind, there's a lot that really goes into that. I talk about how the matrix is designed to create what we call psychological splits. And so, for instance, you have certain topics like, for example, sex. Sex is a major part of my book. And so, in one construct, the matrix cultivates the desire for sex, whereas in another construct, it shuns and it judges sexual, desire. And it judges one for grounding their sexual nature. And so, as a result, that causes a split. And so you get two selves. And so one self is, I guess what you would call your astral self, and the other self is your ego. So our physical self is what we consider to be an ego. And an ego is just a false self that's created by the different constructs of the matrix. However, basically there's another you. There's another aspect of you, which is the astral. And when I first started, when I embarked on my journey in spirituality, I didn't really necessarily understand what the astral self is. But your astral self is basically the self that is not restricted. It's not restricted within the physical. And as an ego, you're restricted. You have rules to follow and laws. If you break those rules and break those laws, there are consequences. And so you're restricted. However, when you go to sleep at night, you lose your ego. In other words, you kind of leave your body. And you go to another realm, which is what I call the astral. And that's where you get to release all of your restrictions, so to speak. So, if you don't identify with any concepts when you're sleeping. When you're sleeping, you're not a woman, you're not a man, you're not rich or poor, you're not black or white, you're nothing really. And so you're able to escape to a place where you get to kind of just do what you want to do and be who you want to be without the limitations of being in physicality and of being in a physical body. So that's your astral self. So basically there's two yous. So within your physical, you may, be more of a sexual prude, so to speak. But say in the astral, you're like a horny devil or something like that. So I know it sounds a little interesting, but that's really essentially what it is. And so, like, for example, especially in media and entertainment, they cultivate the matrix cultivates a desire for sex. So let's say, for example, you're watching TV. Like there's this new commercial out called Sling TV for selling cable TV. It's called Sling. But they equate their product, or they associate their product Sling with swing, which is like a sexual act. It's where it's like a condoned infidelity or whatever, adultery, where people participate in swapping husbands and wives and having sex. And so it makes you look upon swinging as tongue-in-cheek, but you couldn't go to another construct besides media and entertainment. Say if you went to church, you can't go to your preacher and say something like, "Oh, I swang last night." Is that the right word, swang? Yeah, I guess. So you can't say like, "I swang last night," or "I was swinging last night and it was wonderful and it was awesome and I felt so gratified," or something like that, so you wouldn't necessarily be comfortable discussing those particular topics with your preacher or people at church. And so this causes what we call a psychological split. So in one aspect, you see it as something tongue-in-cheek, but in another aspect, you see it as something that is, sinful, so to speak. So there's a judgment against it. So that causes a psychological split. And so I focus on psychological splits throughout the entire book. My book also talks a lot about, it talks about my astral self a good bit. The fact that on the astral realm, I'm a prisoner on the astral realm. I'm a sacral prostitute on the astral realm. I actually work for the elite, and I basically give off my earthly sexual energy, because these beings in the astral, they don't have that anymore. The elite are very much, have definitely plateaued out of experiencing the material. They've shopped and they've, traveled, had sex too much. And so things that normal people, that gratify normal people and that we appreciate, they don't appreciate, because they have all the time and money in the world to ground those things. And ground their desires. But, normal people, don't have that ability. And so because they've plateaued out of experiencing the material, they're very plastic. They're very, they don't have a lot of emotions or any emotions. And so that's why in, New Age culture, they're seen as like these reptilian people, or they're vampires or what have you. But they're not. They're just people. It's just that they are dominated by an idle mind, by a purely psychological mind. And so they don't really have any love. They don't have an earthly aspect to them. So they siphon that from other people. So when I was a little girl, I was sexually abused as a little girl. I was sexually abused as a little girl to deactivate what you would call my kundalini. It's called kundalini in New Age literature. I like to call it the earthly sacral aspect. If you're not familiar with what sacral means, many of you are familiar with chakras, and so you have energy systems in the body. And so there's a chakra or energy system at the base of the spine. I think it's called the Muladhara or something like that. But it is the seat of your will and creativity. That's why women. That's where the genitals are housed. And so that's why women are able to give birth, if you will, because of the genitals, because that's the place of creation. And so as sacral prostitutes, we are. That aspect of us is rotted out, so to speak. So with me, I was sexually abused as a kid and shown pornography before the age of 7, when I was in a theta brainwave frequency. And when I talk about brain frequencies in my videos and in my book, brainwave frequencies are very important. The more you are in a meditative state, the longer the frequency. But most of us are functioning from our unconscious mind, which is a very chaotic energy, a very chaotic brainwave frequency. But children before the age of 7 are in a theta brainwave frequency, and this is the brainwave frequency between life and death, pretty much. I call it the Christ, or the Christ consciousness. And so when you're in that particular brainwave frequency, you can prime the mind for anything you want, whether it be for good or bad. It depends upon the aspect of duality that you want to act out in your physical life. So you can program the kid to be good or bad. And so because before the age of 7, I was abused and shown all of these sexual acts and things like that, it cultivated a desire for sex and the physical from very young. And so I would actually act that out on the astral realm as a prostitute. So, it's very interesting how they deactivate the earthly kundalini and rot out that aspect, that earthly aspect. But yeah, as I began to wake up, that earthly aspect of myself came back, and it came back with a vengeance. And so this is when I started to experience what I call ego dissolution, or crucifixion. New Age calls it the awakening, but I call it a crucifixion, because this carefully concocted ego was slowly, actually I wouldn't even say slowly, I would say rapidly. My carefully concocted ego was rapidly being dismantled, if you will. And as I opened my eye, my third eye, I really started to see life for what it was, and it was very difficult for me to reconcile and integrate that into myself and realize the truth of this world, and that, this world is hell. That's why the elite have us greet each other with "hello, this is hell." So that realization definitely shocked the hell out of me, so to speak. But it is what it is. So my book focuses a lot on the elite, like I said, on the holistic view of spirituality and the split between the left and the right mind, the spirit and matter, and just the constructs that uphold it. This channel is really dedicated to the book that I wrote, and having you get a little bit of prior knowledge before each chapter. Each video that I do is is based upon a chapter in the book, and so I want you to watch that before you read that particular chapter, because a lot of the topics I talk about in this book are very unorthodox. So it's not like you're going to hear a lot of this stuff anywhere else, or if you do hear it, it's considered to be, I guess, what you would call somewhat occult information. When people hear the occult, they're like, ooh, that's really scary. But occult is just it's just not mainstream. Fear, I heard somewhere that fear is the opposite of love, and so I wouldn't suggest that you fear anything, especially information and knowledge. I think that, I don't think, but I know that we all have a gift of discernment that teaches us to, when we hear something, if it's true or not, you don't have to shoot the messenger. You just listen, and if this is something for you, that's fine. If it's not for you, that's fine as well. But this book is definitely about, controversial topics, very touchy, sensitive topics, like sex and religion and race. Race is one that is also a major topic that I touch on, that sounds very uncomfortable to people. And it's even uncomfortable for me. A lot of the topics that I explore in this book, it doesn't feel good as an ego to realize, why they're different races. The demiurge teaches us a whole lot of lies, and it's like, oh, we all bleed red and we're all the same and so forth. And, as an ego, I feel that way, definitely. We all bleed red, we're all the same. I definitely, in my egoic life, I always live life with a whole bunch of diversity. I've always loved interacting with people from different ethnicities and different nationalities, different religions, and learning from people. I think that there's a wealth in doing that, because when you learn about other people, you're learning about yourself. But when we look at behind the root races and so forth, we really see the significance of why we are different. What's the purpose of that? So I explored those occult, justifications behind race and sex and money and that type of thing. So beware. I encourage, spiritual discourse, and the fact that you may not agree with my perspective, which is fine. I'm not, in the book, I'm not looking for people to agree, but I'm just looking to have a conversation, because I feel that when people disagree with me, that's an aspect of me that I need to integrate into myself. So I don't really consider anything that people do or say to be wrong or right. It's just a part of the totality of existence, so to speak. I warn you, my book is biased. I have a very biased book. My book is based upon Eve. It is based upon the feminine right brain aspect of the mind. And so if you're definitely wedded to this patriarchal system, and you're very much a very masculine energy, you are definitely going to clash with this book. It's not going to be a book that you like. But, that's okay, because, I feel that whenever you feel a resistance to something, you need to go towards it, because that something is also a part of you. There's no separations in the true kingdom of God. And so I feel like instead of pushing against something, you should go toward it and try your best to embrace it and integrate it as an aspect of you. If you look in the comment section of this channel, you will see a link to purchase the book off of Amazon. I tried to make the book as economical as possible. It's a very lengthy book. It's almost 1,000 pages or so. So it's it's, and on Amazon, I'm not sure if they actually if it translated into another page, summary, if you will, but it's a lengthy book, and so for that, it's a little bit, a little bit more expensive than what I would have liked it to be. But I do believe in my book, and I do believe that it gives people a perspective about who they are, and it sheds light on having people to become, I guess, what you would call conscious, and unveiling. My book is all about unveiling the unconscious, so what we're not aware of. Brainwave frequencies are very, very important in this book, and so, for example, talking about brainwave frequencies, and I talked about theta and how kids are in a theta brainwave frequency before the age of 7. Theta, you can think of theta, like I said, as a Christ consciousness, and that's the brainwave frequency that we're in when we first wake up in the morning. It's a very much relaxed, and you're very sleepy during theta. It's even hard for Buddhist monks to maintain a theta brainwave frequency in deep meditation. But like I said, I call it the Christ because it's an unbiased state of mind, like a hypnosis. It's hypnosis. It's a state of hypnosis, and so that's why many people who haven't had much luck in psychotherapy. They've gone to psychotherapy for years, and they haven't had any luck, because in psychotherapy you're still in a beta brainwave frequency. You're functioning off of your unconscious mind, but in a theta brainwave frequency, you are under a state of hypnosis where you can prime the mind for whatever you want. So say, for example, you have a phobia for something, like say you have a phobia for spiders, or you have a phobia for flying, or say, you want to lose weight, or you want to stop smoking, you have certain addictions and things like that. You can prime the unconscious mind to undo those addictions in a state of hypnosis. So when you get back to a beta brainwave state, when you wake up out of a state of hypnosis, you'll function in the way that you want, according to your wishes. So you have more ownership of what you're doing. So maybe the hypnotist may say, when you see, when you get on a plane, it'll make you feel like you're on cloud 9 or something like that. Or you feel confident and strong. Or when you see a spider, it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy. You just want to kiss them and play with them, whatever the case is. So when you come out of that state of hypnosis, you will act out the way that you primed your unconscious mind. So that is theta brainwave. After theta, there's alpha. I consider the alpha brainwave frequency to be a frequency of focus. Whenever you're focused on like something, like say you're studying something, or you're watching like a television program, like for example, when I was writing this book, when I wrote this book, I was in a an alpha brainwave frequency. So alpha is the brainwave frequency of focus. And then the last brainwave frequency is a delta brainwave frequency. There's gamma as well, but delta brainwave frequencies is the frequency of sleep. And so when you're in a delta brainwave frequency, that's the closest to death, where you have no mind at all. So brainwaves are very important because they signify that in the hell realm, we do not own ourselves. We're slaves in the hell realm. Our minds are owned by the elite on the astral. So what does that mean? Well, like say for example, if I showed you a picture and quickly, and then I took it away, you may not necessarily be able to recall in a beta brainwave frequency what that picture was, on that picture. But if you were put into a state of hypnosis, you could tell me every single detail, because if you are in a theta brainwave frequency, you are able to, in a way, stop time, so to speak. You stop time, and you can see the totality of everything. This is the Christ. And so if you're in a state where you can't access that theta brainwave frequency, then you're a slave. So if someone shows you a picture of something, and you can't make it out, they own your mind. If you can't recall what they showed you, and they have more knowledge than you do, so they're God. They know more about you than you know about yourself. And so that's a very vulnerable place to be when you don't have control of what goes into the mind. And not only that, but you don't even have access to retrieve what is inside the mind. So, I definitely encourage you guys to read the book. I don't really want to say this in a very like what is it? What's the I don't want to say this like tooting my own horn or anything like that, but I really think it's a great book. I enjoyed writing it. I enjoyed learning from the Christ aspect of myself, that downloaded the spiritual aspect of myself that gave me this information. I was learning as I was writing it. And so it felt like a channeling of information. I wrote it, but there's another aspect of me that wrote the book, in truth. And so, as a result, I was in awe of a lot of the things, and totally amazed at a lot of the information that is in it. So the next video is going to be about the first chapter of the book. It's called The Fall. And in the fall, when we think of the fall of mankind, we think of, mankind being disobedient or whatever the case is to God. And so we fell from grace and that type of thing. But I really put a different spin on the fall of mankind going back to the book of Genesis. If I told you, I fell today, or I was in the park and I fell down, your first question may be, well, why? Why did you fall? Did someone push you? Did you fall and trip over a rock or something like that? What actually caused your fall? And so we don't just fall. There's always a reason or a cause for that. And so I talk about how humanity are slaves for the elite, so they can actually experience their hopes and dreams and things like that on the astral realm. When it talks about the creation of mankind, it talks about Adam and Eve being created after God saw that there was no one to till the ground. So he created earth, but he didn't have anyone to work the ground. And so after he saw that there was no one to till the ground, he made Adam and Eve. And so he made, humanity as slaves. And so it talks about that in the slavery aspect of ourselves, and how whenever we're in this realm or dimension, we are made to be half of ourselves. And so we're not able to descend into reality, into earth reality, in a holistic way. We're born that way. We're born whole. But as we age, we definitely become disintegrated. And so whenever you have disintegration, you have judgment. And so to me, judgment is a monkey mind. When you're in a state of judgment, you're really in the lowest taxonomy of knowledge, which is the what. You're this, you're that. It's all judgment. It's for good or bad. You're good, you're bad, you're rich, you're poor, whatever it is. It's all a judgment. But why are you good? Why are you bad? Why are you rich? Why are you poor? Why are you a racist? Why are you a great person? Whatever it is, why are you a sinner? Why are you a saint? And so this realm really just wants you to stay within the lowest taxonomy of knowledge and take on the identity of your ego, as opposed to ascending and going past the ego, past the wheel of the zodiac, and finding out the true nature of who you really are, which is just an observer of duality. In the fall, I talk about the fall of mankind. I talk about my fall, and I give a lot of personal information about myself and how my ego came to be created. I talk about my family. I talk about my career that I had. I talk about being, a mom and getting married, and all of those different things, growing up in my schooling and religion and stuff like that. So, the book is very much it oscillates between the microcosm of my personal egoic life and the macrocosm of the world, and how that affects both you and I. So I will see you guys in the fall. Thank you for listening.